Hello, welcome everybody, Hill Center. My name is Scott St. Ange. I'm the development director here. So great to see so many friends and neighbors for this important conversation for our community. And very proud of our partnership with Hill Rag and all they offer the community. Putting these events together is no small feat. So thank you for organizing multiple events. Andrew, Hill Rag.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Andrew Lightman. I run the Hill Rag. I'm the managing editor. So we make the trains run on time. Pick up this month's Hill Rag. Oh, one other thing I should say. We are 50 years old this year. So please support us. You support us by picking the paper up and taking it home. This month, there's full election coverage in the paper. Every single contested race has an article that's issue related, and there are QR codes for candidate bios. And we just put the same thing out on our email list today. We'll do it again probably in a week or two. Ballots are going to drop probably tomorrow, the next day. I would urge you to read the piece we did on ranked choice if you have not figured that out yet. And I'll also urge you not to vote in person, but if you get and vote by mail, because there'll be people that are there for at least 20, 30 minutes trying to figure that ballot out. I'm telling you, I'm not going though. And I live across the street from the polling station. I want to thank our partners in this endeavor. We've done 5 of these. Maggie, put up your hand. Maggie is the head of the Ward 6 Dems, our local ward organization. They are absolutely wonderful. They do a lot of community work and a lot of political work, and you can talk to Maggie about how to get involved. In addition to them, the Ward 2 Dems are a sponsor, Spotlight DC, the Center for Investigative Journalism is a sponsor, and lastly, Stonewall, which is the oldest gay democratic organization in the city. We're doing this collectively. This is one of 5 forums, and the last one will be this coming Sunday at St. Coletta's, where the at-large candidates will be up, and I will be cross-examining them and torturing them. I'm going to hand the mic over to Liz, who's my ace reporter, and she's going to moderate tonight.
Thank you all. I'm actually his only reporter, so... But before we meet our candidates in Ward 6, for Ward 6, let's meet one person who hasn't had a chance to meet you all yet. We had originally scheduled a debate with the candidates for the Office of the Attorney General. Mr. Schwab stepped away from that debate, but the challenger, attorney, ANC in Ward 3, and 1 Major League Stadium away from visiting all of the MLB stadiums, Mr. J.P. Simkowitz will have 5 minutes to speak to you.
Hi, everybody. My name is J.P. Simkowitz. I'm a 5th-generation resident of the District of Columbia. I've been elected 4 times as the ANC commissioner in the Foxhall area of our city within Ward 3. My parents are here in the back. My wife is here. My wife designed the cherry blossom logos that you see all the time. So that's her claim to fame. And I'm very happy to be married to her. So I'm running for Attorney General because we've been in a crime crisis for at least 6 years now. And it's a crime crisis of our own making. We've had a deficit of officers in MPD. We should have around 4,000 officers. We only have 3,170 at last count. That is causing a lot of problems. We also do not provide accountability for children who commit crimes, and that is causing a lot of people to suffer. Unfortunately, in my family, my cousin was murdered. He was a 16-year-old kid. That drives a lot of what I do. My wife's brother was shot on North Capitol Street, just driving down the road. Fortunately, he survived. My mother's best friend's mother, my grandmother's best friend, lived in Anacostia, and she was killed. She was an elderly lady, robbed and killed. So, this is the background that I have. I don't want people to suffer through what my family and friends have suffered through. Although last night my car was parked on the street and somebody hit it and ran, and that's it's not a serious crime. Nobody got hurt, but still, the culture in our city is that you can hit a car and run, and we've got a $500 deductible to pay, and we got to take the day off to go get our car fixed. So I'm running against Mr. Schwab, who would have been running unopposed if I hadn't been running, and as a commissioner, we had a pedestrian death, and car safety and pedestrian safety, bike safety is important in our city, obviously. And a pedestrian was crossing Foxhall Road near where I live, and she was in the crosswalk, and she was hit by a driver who knocked the poor lady 19 feet through the air to where she hit her head and died on the scene. And as an ANC commissioner for that area, I wrote to Mr. Schwab and I said, what's going on? Nothing happened in the case for a long time. Finally, there was a plea deal that we were not made aware of at the ANC, and the plea was to the charge of failure to yield. Now, failure to yield is where you step into an intersection and a car drives around you, nobody gets hurt. Reckless driving, I've been a lawyer for 32 years. Reckless driving is where somebody hits you and hurts you. He pled it down to a $50 fine. So I sent him a letter, a second letter now. I sent him a third letter. I sent him a fourth letter. He never provided a response to why he did this. So people said, hey, you gotta go challenge this guy. He didn't come to the debate today, which is really frustrating. That should tell you something. That shows how much he cares about being here. I'm here. I'm here to win your vote. And he did the same thing to me in Ward 3 debate. Didn't show up. You don't want to have an elected official who's not accountable. As a commissioner, if somebody wants to ask me about my vote on a certain issue, give me a call, 202-607-5500. I'll answer your phone call, and I'll try to explain why I voted the way I did. He doesn't do that. He's unaccountable. I've been a lawyer for 32 years, as I said. I've worked for my dad for most of that time. I started my career in the PG County State Attorney's Office in the Juvenile Division, so I get, juvenile prosecution, and I get the fact that the goal is rehabilitation and not punishment. My mom was a social worker, so it's been drilled into my head since I was a little kid. My famous cases are, I was the lawyer for the lady that sued the Washington Redskins for the pedestrian access case where Dan Snyder wouldn't let people walk to FedEx Field from the surrounding area. That got me a lot of publicity because I took on, the biggest guy in DC next to the president, Dan Snyder. I also took on the president of the United States when he kidnapped through his INS at the time, my client Alexander Kononikin, and that was part of a deal to return Alexander to Russia to make a deal with Vladimir Putin. I stopped the airplane from flying, and after a week-long trial, Judge Ellis, who's a really tough judge, said we get to keep him in the country, and he's here today. So I've had a lot of experience. I'm tough. I don't back down, and I thank you for giving me the time to be here today.
Good work. Excellent. Please look them up. Make your choices, folks. So, just the rules of the game. Each of our candidates will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves, and at the end of this, a 1-minute close. They'll have 2 minutes to answer each of their questions. You can see our delightful timekeeper up here. We'll let you know when you have 15 seconds left, and when you see stop, we will probably allow you to finish the sentence. Please do not speak and run on sentences, because then I have to talk over you. Believe you me, I understand the problem of a word count and a deadline. But we've talked a lot about management during this campaign so far, so let's do some good management. Excellent. So let's start with our introductions. Because we have an incumbent on the stage, I believe this is the only race on your Ward 6 ballot where you will have one, aside from your ANC commissioners. Let's start at the other end with Mr. Murphy. 2 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me? Hi, I'm Mike Murphy. I am a 30... Hold it closer. There we go. Mike Murphy. I am a private practice lawyer in town. I moved to DC in 1993. I do consumer protection and data privacy and whistleblower litigation primarily, also some commercial litigation. When I first moved to DC, I worked for the International Brotherhood of Teamsters in the 90s and worked on some big supporting bargaining committees for the UPS strike in 97 and the Master Freight strike in 94. After that, I worked for the Corporation Counsel when I was going to law school at night, which is now the DC Attorney General's office. And most recently, work-wise, I took a sabbatical from my current firm to work for a nonprofit called the Drum Major Institute, supporting one of my pro bono clients, Martin Luther King III. So it was that experience, an investigative experience, that sort of led me down, hanging out with MPD officers quite a bit and learning about the crime stats issue that's recently boiled up. I was the first to go public with the charges that the MPD was, in fact, manipulating the crime stats, the violent crime stats, where they were deviating from the FBI data we reported to a significant degree, where we reported a 9% drop in violent crime in 2024 to where we were under DC code, we were reporting a 35% drop. So anyway, you can see all that coming to fruition now. I think government's very important. I'm a progressive who believes deeply in government, but also that government has to work, it has to acknowledge when things aren't working, and it has to make adjustments quickly. That's all I got.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Gloria Ann Nodden. I'm a 35-year resident of Washington, D.C. and 30-year homeowner. Started my career here in the private sector in media. Went on to have my own firm, and then was appointed at the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities, where I started basically a career in community development as I look at arts being a driver of community development and sometimes community economic development. I then went on to be elected as the ANC 6A02 Commissioner, which is the Capitol Hill side of the H Street. And since the beginning of my time here in Washington, I've been a staunch advocate for community, centering community voices, being a youth development practitioner, if you will. And I currently run a nonprofit called DC Community Development Consortium, and we work with small businesses. In that time, I've also worked at City First Bank. It's DC's first community development financial institution. So a lot of my approach is rooted in practical concepts of developing communities, where we're balancing what community needs with what business communities are offering. Ward 6. I'm running on crime, public safety, youth development, affordability, and small business support. I have 2 daughters here in public and charter schools, and I look forward to a vigorous and rigorous race as a champion for all great things in Washington, D.C. as a pragmatic Democrat. Thank you.
You guys are going to steal my job at this rate with your work counting deadline. Go on, Charles.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Charles Allen. Thank you guys so much for hosting this and pulling us together, and thank you all for taking time out this evening for the conversation. I am very proud and privileged to have served as your Ward 6 council member, and I'm excited about the work that we have done and frankly, what we've accomplished together. When I look back over the last couple of years, and as your council member, we've done a few ways that Ward 6 has really led our city. One is when we focused on our schools and our public education. When I came in, we really wanted to focus on how do we help bridge the gap for middle school, and how do we really make sure that families can see their pathway from pre-K all the way through graduation. Ward 6 now is the fastest growing ward in terms of enrollment and the fastest growing ward in terms of achievement. That is something we should be incredibly proud of. I also wanted to focus on how do we make sure that this is a place everyone can call home. So how do we focus on affordable housing? I'm very proud that over the last 10, 11 years, Ward 6 has led the way in the most amount of affordable housing creation than any other ward in our city. That's a really important win. Also very focused on public safety. How do we make sure that we have been bringing violent crime down, and how have we brought law enforcement and community together to help achieve those gains, and how do we lock those in to make those permanent? A really important part of the progress that we've made here. We're also facing significant headwinds, though. We know that Donald Trump has caused tens of thousands of people in our city to lose their jobs, and it's impacted our region. But I'm confident we can meet that because we can. I know the city I want to live in is one that is affordable. That's why you'll see me continue to focus on how we build and preserve affordable housing, but make sure that you can afford the utility bills and drive those down. And I have specific proposals about how we actually accomplish that. I want to make sure that we continue to be a city that you can raise your kids all the way through and make sure that our schools have everything that we need to make sure that you go all the way through high school and your kid has the confidence to graduate with the skills that they need. I'm confident that we can meet the challenges ahead. I want to ask for your vote. I think I'm a tested, trusted member on council, a senior member of the council, and I've been grateful for the support I've had in Ward 6. I'm excited about another term and ask you to please write me number 1 on your ballot on June 16th.
Nice, guys, nice. All right, friends, first question, big question. If you win, what does successful leadership in Ward 6 look like over the next 4 years? We'll start with you, Ms. Nunn.
So when I win, successful leadership in Ward 6 looks like starting with, of course, a 4-year plan. And you come out of the gate with 30, 60, 90 days of action. We have a lot of priorities that are quite urgent that have not been addressed. One example is the teen curfew, so immediately enacting concepts that we actually produced just a couple of weeks ago called a Spring Break Community Service Week. It's modeled after the Summer Youth Employment Program. So it's immediate action to engage youth where they are and also focus on community policing. We have this gap, I think Michael mentioned, about 900, actually it was the Attorney General candidate, 900 vacant seats. We have to figure out what those incentives have to look like. Specifically because having the National Guard here is not sustainable. What do we do when they're not here and we have 900 seats that are empty on the police force? So that is probably the most proactive action that I will take. And 4 years is going to look exciting because we'll have a stadium as part of anchoring our commercial corridors. So I'm very excited to help resurrect corridors like the Eastern Market, Pennsylvania Avenue. I consider them legacy corridors that really haven't been invested in. And so just really looking at small business development. So that's what it will look like for me.
Councilmember?
In 4 years, 4 years from now, success for Ward 6 is going to look like the continued investments, the continued gains that we have been able to do, but also focusing on where we continue to see progress. So for example, we're going to be celebrating a brand new Southeast Branch Library reopening. One of the things that I have really prioritized as your council member is focusing on how we create great public spaces. So whether that's Cobb Park, we just opened this past weekend, whether it's RFK Field, that make sure that kids and families have so many opportunities, or whether it's a library. So making sure that we continue to build out these spaces in every corner of our ward is going to be one of the ways we deliver on continued success. But success has to be more than just building the building or building the park. It's making sure that everybody has an opportunity to see themselves here. We are facing a moment right now in our city where the mayor's proposed budget is eliminating support for childcare. If we want to be a city 4 years from now where families know that they can have access to childcare, we have to fight to restore that funding and make sure that those investments in early childhood education stick. That's what I help fight for, to make sure that that happens. If we want to make sure that people can afford our city, we got to make sure that their utility bills don't continue to spike. We make sure that they can afford their rent. We have a large number of renters in Ward 6. To make sure that 4 years from now, success means that they're still here. It means getting rid of things like common area utility fees, which anybody who rents is going to tell you is just a disaster, unpredictable, and is just predatory from some of these management companies and landlords. I've gotten that bill through the council. It's up for a final vote very soon. Success looks like making sure that everybody in our community is able to benefit from the investments and the priorities that we've made in our city. And I think that's why Ward 6 has elected me across the entire ward, in every corner. I think it's why in all of my elections, I've won every single precinct in our city, because we prioritize every single neighbor, every single neighborhood across our ward.
Go ahead, Mr. Murphy.
Hey, all right, thank you. So I think 4 years from now, I think success looks like an MPD that's fully staffed with, a workable sort of neighborhood community policing component to it. I think conducting real oversight, rebuilding the trust that we've lost with the manipulated crime stats. I think continuing the public spaces, I think, has been wonderful, but that's something that we've seen across the city as well, right? I mean, everybody's libraries have been done, everybody's parks have been done. I mean, everybody is east of the river, a little behind, but we need to make sure that gets caught up as well. But I think rebuilding public trust, rebuilding the perception and reality of how safe our city is, generally pretty safe, places that are not. If we had New York City's per capita murder rate last year, we'd have had 26 murders and not 127. So there's a lot of work to do. So I want to keep those numbers going in the right direction. We have seen progress. We've seen a spike recently. I want to address all those issues frankly and forthrightly. I think dealing with our truancy issue is something that really needs to be handled, because that is a cause and a symptom to a lot of youth crime problems. I think we need to do an MOU with the Bureau of Prisons to keep people we are putting away in jail close to home and close to communities so they can get back in. I think that is achievable with rebuilding trust with Congress. So I think everybody up here has very similar goals, probably slightly different ways to get them done, but I think everybody with good faith community effort that we can sort of achieve a lot, as we have already. Thank you.
Excellent. Let's switch gears a little bit. What can you do? What will you do in the future as a council member to improve public education? This one you get to start, Councilmember Al.
Excellent. I've talked about the gains we've seen across Ward 6, and those are great, but nobody needs to rest on their laurels. We got to focus on what more do we do. How do we make sure that everybody is able to enjoy, experience all those benefits? I think one of the biggest challenges we face right now in education is the chronic truancy and absenteeism that we've seen in our school. And that creates a very significant unevenness as well in the educational outcomes that take place. So I've introduced legislation, for example, and I think one of the ways that we can attack this is that we need to help support and fund our schools in a way that when a school is experiencing a high level of truancy or a high level of absenteeism, they need more resources, not less. What we frequently are seeing is dollars being pulled away from our school communities at the very time when they need them. So making sure they have the staff support, but making sure they actually have the dollars and the resources. So my proposal increases, for example, the at-risk formula. That's the way we fund our schools per student, to make sure that if they're experiencing high absenteeism or truancy, we make sure they have the resources they need. It also invests in our Safe Passages program, because not every student is in school just because they want to. It is because they have barriers to get into the classroom or get to school. That could be a myriad of reasons why. And our Safe Passages program has been shown to help make sure the kids are safe from the metro to the school. They're able to deconflict and stop that conflict before it really even gets to a boiling point. And it makes sure the schools have those resources. That's the type of investment that we need in our public education system to make sure that they have the resources they need. And I think when we do that, those gains that we talked about that we're really proud of across Ward 6, I think it's a way that we make sure it reaches every single child in every single school.
Ms. Nunn.
So as a mother of two coming up through the Capitol Hill cluster, and we've gone through every public school and some charter schools, Appletree and Lincoln Park, I have to tell you, I don't know if you guys can feel me on this, but it's very challenging, to think about the pathway for your kid to go beyond junior high school. So, it's really about predictability and having the confidence in the pathway, so that there's not a cliff when you have to get to, a high school that is, high performing, if you will. And these are things that I'm hearing from our neighbors who, cannot afford, we're talking about middle class. We can't afford to send our child to private schools. And so we need the confidence of a continuum from early childhood and having that being affordable. That's not something that I'm experiencing now, but I'm knocking on doors. Parents are saying it's not affordable, it's not accessible. You talk to the daycare providers, again, they have middle class folks that, do kind of need a voucher to pay $2,400 a month per kid. And usually we have two. We have one of the youngest wards in the city. The quality of education, it is uneven here in Ward 6, And, we need to definitely focus on the per pupil funding. I think we're at about 14,500, and for at-risk, maybe 28,000. So definitely would support, deeper investments in mental health, behavioral health, having access to that in every school. That list is, there's a waiting list for children who need to engage, and that sort of support services. So that's it.
I think many of the student-related stuff, I think one thing we need to get a handle on is our teacher turnover, which is astronomically high right now. One way to do that is, I think, to repeal the impact system that they are, bristling under. I don't think they're going to see a pay raise anytime soon, unfortunately, given the budget pressures we're under. But I think giving them more say over negotiating their evaluation system, going through and getting rid of the impact system that disproportionately affects younger teachers who are trying to work in these at-risk schools, I think would go a long way towards tenured, seasoned professionals that can pick up on these signals that are problems. I think getting to school is a problem. I just saw a post study that said you're 24% more likely to be hit near a school than elsewhere in the city. So I think, Safe Passages has certainly a long way to go. It's a good start. But I think, teacher satisfaction, teacher burnout, truancy, where a week turns into a month, turns into, out on a Lime bike committing robberies in the middle of the day, right? We need to get a handle on that. And, I think that's what we can do to sort of stabilize the school environment for these kids. I mean, we're making huge investment in them. I think we should try to get what we can out of them.
Let's switch gears slightly. What specific steps would you take to support small businesses and neighborhood commercial corridors in Ward 6? We have seen some shuttered storefronts. We have heard struggles. What steps would you take? Nan, you're going to begin this.
Absolutely. So first of all, I don't know if you guys know all of what Ward 6 is, but it's Capitol Hill. You all know the core. H Street, which is 15-block corridor. We have Nome, which is a new business cluster. Mount Vernon Triangle, Penn Quarter, all of the Wharf, Southwest, Buzzard Point. We have that one stadium, Audi Field, as an anchor, economic anchor, and then back up on Capitol Hill, Barracks Row. Okay, so first it has to be around, safety. What's the domino effect of something as fundamental as crime and public safety? And crime does look different now because we have behavioral health issues. We have, homeless populations that are spilling out onto corridors. We have to figure out a way between MPD and behavioral health services and ambassadors, concepts like that, to stabilize the corridors so that whether it's the perception of crime or it's the literal, the data that it still exists, we have to mitigate that because we are a tourism economy. In all the places I said, we attract at Eastern Market global tourists. H Street are local, regional tourists. Navy Yard as well, regional tourism. So when you talk to small business owners and they're saying that their businesses are collapsing and they're shuttering their doors, crime being the leading cause for their loss of business, property taxes as well, regulatory issues and how long it takes to get permitting. These are the kinds of things that we have to face head on because it ends up domino affecting even the economy around jobs. Then we lose jobs. It's where our kids get their first jobs. And when we don't have these Main Street businesses, the small businesses, then we don't have the charm of what Ward 6 is. And it's our small businesses, our mom and pop shops.
Yes, Mr. Murphy.
Parrot that a little bit here on the public safety thing. I think it is a hugely important component where you need perception and reality to be matched up, right? I walk up and down H Street and go see my friends at Cynthia or Copycat or wherever, Keto. Know people who are terrified to death to do that, right? That's not the reality, but perception hurts, right? And you build that, you get those two to match, by having public trust in our numbers, not reporting different things to the FBI than we're reporting to the DC public. As far as procedure stuff, I think there are, we need to put the zoning and the building folks on strict time limits. I've heard 8th Street projects drag out for 3 years without getting approval. That's inexcusable. You're adding cost, you're driving people away. We have 90 storefronts empty on 8th Street right now, 90-ish. Barracks Row is seeing it as well. I offered a plan on the minimum wage, creating a 2-track system where you can either opt in or opt out of the minimum wage. I mean, we've seen more restaurants close last year than open, and we're going right down that path again. And I think a new 83 initiative that was paused last summer, and we're in a materially worse economic place than when we paused it last summer. So I think that is one that's going to kill a lot of small businesses, and it's also going to kill youth employment opportunities too, because I mean, it's just the reality is that teenagers aren't going to get hired for $25 an hour. So we need to sort it out. We need to make sure that their permits are going through. We're making sure that DDOT and the water folks are coordinating, so you're not dragging out process like they did at Mott's Market unnecessarily, and just piling on cost unnecessarily that we're doing.
So when I get together with a lot of our small businesses around Ward 6, part of it starts by getting them and having them talk about what are the challenges they're facing, what are the ways that we can change and make improvements. And that's directly led to legislative reforms. For example, and it gets a little wonky, but getting into like the DRAM insurance policy to try to help lower their insurance costs, right? One of the things they talked about were the high cost of triple net leases and what they're having to carry. So I created a small business tax credit to make sure that we were lowering their costs. Then I doubled it. We're looking to double it again. So it's more than $10,000 every year that a small business, not the big businesses, the small businesses can get to help support them. I think it starts by making sure that they are helping share their experiences and then figuring out how we help solve that. We're working with one business, for example, off H Street that for months has been getting just one agency tell them one thing, another agency tell them another, and delay after delay after delay because the government can't get out of its own way to tell them what they need. That means months of delay that they can't hire, they can't be open, and they can't create the vitality and activity that we want. So we're looking not only just to be the constituent services place where a lot of our businesses call my office and just ask for help. We become the expediter for the permitting office ourselves. But how do we change the structure? What I want to see in a city is a one-stop center where decision makers of every agency sit in the same room, so only one phone call gets to make. Because every business tells me they are too busy trying to run a business than to make a dozen different phone calls to track down the right person. That's infuriating for them. Another thing that I would say is a concrete step. We right now have to compete with national chains to be able to fill up our storefronts. And what we want is for local independent places. I'm sorry if you like a Cheesecake Factory. I really don't want a Cheesecake Factory. I want more Solid States. I want more Labyrinths. I want more Hill's Kitchen. I want local businesses, right? And to do that, we have to help do rent guarantees to help make sure that they can compete and get a level footing against these national chains who come in with 30-year or 15-year rent guarantees and are making it impossible to be able to compete.
Good question. Mr. Murphy, where this is just coincidence. Our next question, and you will begin. Violent crime has declined significantly since 2023, but many residents say they still do not feel safe. What specific policies from the last 5 years would you continue, and what would you change?
Well, I think crime has in fact dropped since 23. 23 was pretty horrible, and quite a regression. I do want to build MPD back up. I think we were at 3,700 or so. I think somewhere in the 35 to 3,700 range makes sense. We're at 3,100 now. I think the overtime that we're paying really bears it out how short-staffed we are. I mean, this was, it was the council's plan to attrit out down to about 3,500, and we've blown way past that. So, I mean, I think there's some recognition that 3,600 is kind of a good number. I think rebuilding that trust, I think we need to, again, sort of stop reporting two streams of crime data, one where we report to the FBI different numbers than we report. I think on the comprehensive crime bill that was, overturned in Congress and, signed by Biden. I think, I was at the AG event the other day and, Brian said, 95% of that bill made sense. I think we strip out the 5%, strip out the jury trials for misdemeanors, strip out the reduction of penalties for sex crimes and gun crimes that are in there and pass that bill now. Let's lead on the issue. Let's take Congress on head on, get that bill through. It's needed. Our criminal code is antiquated. It is getting in the way of some enforcement and making things confusing. And there's no reason that bill should have been sitting around for the last couple of years unpassed. And 95% of it makes sense, and 95% of it would pass on a bipartisan basis. So I think that's what I would do.
One of the things I think that we've got to do, and your question was for specific proposals. One is when we talk about our MPD staffing, it's not a money issue. We are putting a lot of money into MPD, and they can't hire for the positions that we have funded. That's been going on for years. One of the places where I think we need to continue to grow is with our MPD cadet program. So one of the things I've helped do is grow that from 15 cadets per year to 150 cadets per year. So for anybody who's not familiar with this program, this is helping a high school student, a high school senior, be able to get a college education, and they be able to have a job waiting on the other side of it into a solid career with great benefits. And so we now have it at 150 cadets per year, and the chief and the MPD leadership says this is the number one pipeline they have. So I'm proud to help grow that from 15 to 150. I think we need to continue doing that because it helps give young people an opportunity for a college education and a career, but it's also a great way that we help address our pipeline issue. Because right now, 85, almost 90% of our officers aren't from DC. Our cadet program helps make sure that we are growing a solid pipeline of DC residents that go into our police force, and I think you have better community policing when folks are from and of the communities in which they serve. The other piece, while we're watching our violent crime go down across the district and we're seeing that mirrored across the rest of the country, I still don't believe our city has a comprehensive gun violence safety plan. We have a gun violence prevention director position that sits empty. The mayor has not put forward an entire gun violence prevention strategy and plan. If we want to be able to make these gains permanent, if we want to make them lasting, then we have to invest in the type of coordination that really makes sure that we are putting all of our efforts together. So it's not just accountability when violence happens, but it's the prevention on the front side to stop it from happening in the first place. You got to pair those two things together, and having a comprehensive strategy, which is lacking right now, is a big part of what has to happen.
I said it earlier about how I'm not hearing anybody that's currently holding office or anyone that's running for office about a proactive plan on when we do not have the National Guard, unless everybody in here wants to admit you don't mind the National Guard being here. But I know it's not part of the culture that we experience here on Capitol Hill or any other neighborhood if you've been here longer than 10 years. That is not part of the fabric of how we experience communities. We want to be able to walk outside of our houses and say hi to Johnny, the police officer who's on his bike or he's on foot and he knows your son's name. And he might live next door. Why? Because we built, workforce housing that honors their service. We want them to be close to us the same way we would want EMS, firefighters, and teachers. And this is the kind of concept around neighborhood and community policing. It's not something that's something we've had back in the day. I've been here long enough to have experienced that. And we have lost that. So we've lost the trust. We've lost officers who've, in the recruitment phase, but I've also heard from police officers the retention aspect. So, yes, we're attracting, but we're not retaining them. Burnout from overtime, because when we have hundreds of positions open, people do have to work overtime to keep us safe. I want to go to zero violent crimes because, we're talking about legislation and policies, but I'm talking to people with lived experience of the trauma of being violently carjacked, right? So I want us to get to zero with violent crimes, whether that's, carjacking issues, robberies, or even, domestic violence. When we talk about crimes, that's also something that is upticking because of our, economic vulnerabilities.
Mr. Murphy, you answered this already. I want to give you guys about 30 seconds to all respond. Mr. Murphy, you can start just to show up your answer. What's the right number of MPD officers and why?
So in 2012, we were at about 3,800 we had our lowest number of murders that year, 88. So somewhere in the 36 to 3,800 range, I would think. 35. I mean, there are gains. There's efficiencies with AI where we can screen all body camera footage and do training. There are certain efficiencies since then that I think have been gained. So, I mean, again, it's talking to MPD, talking to the union, talking to the communities who feel over-policed, and some in the same community feel under-policed, right? They don't see them. So it's 35 to 3,800 is the range.
Mr. Hunton?
I'm going to trust what the MPD and FOP have decided the number they need to keep our cities safe. So the exact number, again, we're looking at 900 empty seats, and one place that when we defunded was around investigative units in MPD. So we need to staff within that, and also we need to because of the burnout rate. So we need the numbers that the people who run in the organization and the agency are saying they need. So we need to give them what they need. The funding is there, but it's just a matter of how are we going to attract them.
Yeah, the funding is there. The council's been funding MPD positions for years. The hiring is the hard part, getting people in. So we end up with vacancies for all the positions that we've been looking at. The number 4,000 has taken on kind of the mythological state at this point. 3,800, 4,200, is it 4,000? I'd rather listen to our DC auditor, who's actually done a comprehensive staffing review to look at what are best practices, not just for our department, but for others, and then how do you best strategically deploy the resources and the staffing that you have. So we absolutely need more, but the exact number, I don't want to just sit here on a stage and make up a number that ends in 2 zeros. It needs to be based on what we actually need.
One more public safety question, because when I wrote my article on the three of you, I said that you diverge wildly, even though Mr. Murphy said you have more in common. But where you diverge mostly is public safety. So, Ms. Knott, I'm going to let you start this one. What should the city's response be to these youth gatherings and crime concerns we've been seeing in areas, particularly the Navy Yard, but also U Street, the Wharf?
Yeah, this is probably the favorite question for me. Deep youth intentional investments with the communities that surround the area. For Navy Yard, for instance, youth are coming from, not necessarily just Greenleaf, but Kenilworth Parkside, Ward 7 and Ward 8. And youth are literally just saying, we don't have anything constructive or structured to do. And so, again, I responded by creating a spring break youth community program. So engaging 23 youth within 48 hours, putting them with community partners like the Wharf and Politics and Pros and Board of Elections, if you will. And they also worked on my campaign. These are the kinds of things teenagers want to do and to be economically enfranchised, if you will, and get their community service hours. So sometimes it's just brass tacks like that we are not supporting, as well as local community-based organizations are not being funded to mitigate any of these issues around youth. So the number one focus would be around intentional youth engagement.
Councilmember, you next.
Sure. Did you want it specifically around curfew?
No, just the overall response to youth gatherings.
Okay.
Is curfew a response?
I think it is a tool in the toolbox. My criticism of it has been it just can't be the only tool we reach for. We've got to make sure that we are engaging young people. When I talk to a lot of the young people who were at some of the large events that DPR hosted, they talked about it being a fun event, a good event where they found live music, they found food, they found camaraderie, they found activities and structure, and they really liked that. Why is it that we're just going to, DPR just said, well, I'll just hold this one big event for the whole city? I've been pushing, why do we close our DPR centers on the nights and the weekends? At the very time when our young people need them. I've had legislation on this waiting. The mayor has opposed it and said they don't want to fund it and doesn't want to staff it up. But if we want to engage young people, then we need to have our DPR rec centers open at the very time our young people need them most. We've talked about our Marion Barry Summer Youth Employment Program. Why is it only in the summer? We've talked about it needs to be expanded year round. How do you make sure that young people have that opportunity for not just learning a little bit on the job, but actually having exposure to different careers, different opportunities, and then put a little money in their pocket at the same time? Those are the types of strategies I think that can be highly effective, can engage young people, but it's got to start by actually listening to the young people. There's a bunch of old people that can sit around and come up with all kinds of great ideas, but if you're not actually talking to the young people and saying, what is it you want? What is it you want to see? What will engage you? Then the adults in the room are going to keep missing. So you have to engage young people in what that solution looks like. But then the city's responsibility is then to go listen to them and do it, whether it's keeping a rec center open on the weekends, whether it's making summer youth employment year round, or whatever the programs are, whatever the activities are, whatever the support for those community organizations, it has to happen.
Mr. Murphy.
So I agree with all that, and I will use a fraction of my time here. I mean, I think we do need to create programming, but we also need to create spaces where if people are bringing guns, if people are bringing knives to these youth gatherings, to their youth facilities, that there is, in fact, consequences for that, right? I mean, we can't have 1,000 kids gather and 6 people show up with guns, right? We need to make sure that people who are endangering other youth lives are being punished, and there are consequences. So, I mean, I agree. We need to fund DPR. We need to create second, third spaces, and that we need to, sort of make sure that the criminal sort of enforcement is swift, certain, and fair, right? So I think that there needs to be less leeway on how we're treating sort of youth gun violence, because we have a surplus of murders. Unfortunately, a lot of young black males. We're in the top 5 or so per capita murder rate in the country right now. So there's again tons to celebrate, but we're seeing a lot of unnecessary killing and trauma sort of visited upon our neighborhoods.
Linked, because everything is linked. Government, isn't it? And you'll start with this, Mr. Allen, Councilmember Allen. So, Ward 6 has seen tremendous growth, major development, rising property values over the last decade. Has all that development been successful?
I think when we talk about adding more housing, adding more affordable housing, adding more jobs, that is what we need to see in our city. I am a very pro-growth council member who has worked to make sure we are growing our city. When our city is talking about affordable housing all the time, the fact that Ward 6 leads in the creation of affordable housing is something I'm very proud of. But I'll give you one example why I'm trying to push to make sure we get it done right. There's a project in Noma called the Emblem, which is going to be a 100% affordable housing building going up right in the heart of Noma, where we're seeing a lot of development that is higher end. Part of what this building is going to deliver is not just affordability on the rent, but we need to be able to use creative financing tools like the DC Green Bank. And that is actually helping the gap financing to be able to put in the sustainability and environmental and climate type of efforts into this building that's going to drive utility costs down. So in this building, not only are we going to have 100% of the units be more affordable, but now, because of the investments that we're making through the Green Bank, now the utility costs for the people who live there, 30 to 40% less than they would otherwise be. This is the heart of Noma, where I can walk to multiple metro stations, I can walk to 4 grocery stores, I can walk to multiple schools. It is a amenity-rich, transit-rich neighborhood, and we're making sure that everybody's going to be able to call it home. That, to me, is what success looks like. Is not just the growth itself, but the growth for everybody. Making sure that it's intentional, that it supports our residents, that it's intentional in building out the type of small businesses that we want, that you can have some anchor institutions, but you can also support the preservation of legacy businesses, but also make sure that you are attracting independent and small businesses in that space. That, to me, is a big part of what success looks like, and part of what we've been pushing hard, I've been pushing hard at the council on your behalf to do.
I'm going to give you a follow-up question because you actually got skipped there to start, and also because you're the incumbent. If this has been such successful development, why are concerns about displacement and affordability still so widespread in Ward 6?
Well, I think because when you see new homes going up and new people coming in, one of the struggles that we look at is how do you make sure that everybody can benefit from it? So when I talk to longtime homeowners, for example, my next door neighbor or others, part of what we see as well is that in areas that have seen a lot of growth of new businesses or great investments in transit or other, the schools have improved and so you see property values start to go up. How do you make sure that that home is going to continue to be accessible for the family and create generational wealth? I did not start off wanting to learn a whole lot about probate court, but I've learned a lot about probate court. And how do you make sure that generational wealth, especially when we see it lost in DC with Black and brown families, how do we make sure that we have our laws reformed? I led a reform through the council on heirs property. Super wonky for anybody who really wants to dig into this, but essentially our old laws were, I think, Jim Crow laws that basically made it so that when a family lost a matriarch of a family, for example, the home itself would get divided up and that home, the generational wealth that was built, would be lost. We've reformed our laws to make sure that actually the family is able to have much more clear title to the property, and the children or grandchildren now are able to benefit from that home, that investment that maybe somebody made back in 1940, but now has huge potential. That's one of the ways that we also ensure generational wealth for families in DC, where we are seeing neighborhoods that are increasing in property values, to your example, and how you make sure that people can realize the benefits that everybody is able to call it home and everyone's able to benefit from the type of growth that we've seen, not just in Ward 6, but frankly across the whole city.
John, I'm going to repeat that question for you because we digressed. Ward 6 has seen enormous growth, major development, and rising property values over the last decade. Has all this development been successful?
Well, you love the amenities that come with it. Again, I'm a homeowner, has increased the value in my home. But when I talk to longtime residents, especially African American residents, who I would consider legacy families, they are struggling because of the property tax assessment. What they're asking for me to do in my first 90 days is to create an abatement or a stay on longtime residents. They need relief. They don't have the same incomes they did, when they were working 25 years ago. And so when I think about the growth, I think about not bringing everybody along with us, especially longtime residents, who have, earned the right to stay, and we need to be able to support them. And then you go over to areas like James Creek, Syfax, and where it's literally, Section 8 housing projects, below low income. And, just their fear of displacement and not being able to enjoy all of the amenities that, Southwest has to offer. So I think a lot about that and what we can do to strengthen those families, between the two-generation model, when we're there, it's not necessarily about wealth creation so much as it's education and the quality of education that they receive and making sure that, parents do have a pathway to economic opportunity, quality, livable wages. So that's the spectrum of feedback that I'm getting around displacement issues when we are experiencing a beautiful boom, if you will, but just that we're not bringing everybody along with us.
So yeah, yes. Like everything else, like there are no right or wrong answers, right? There are trade-offs when you make policy. I think it's been wildly successful. I remember I moved to the Hill in '94. I remember walking up to Murray's, right? I now walk to Whole Foods. So go back and watch the intro to the movie Spies Like Us, and they pan over Union Market. You can kind of see how far it's come. It's pretty amazing. With that has come some problems. Similar to what Gloria introduced is to keep people who are in their homes, own their homes, and are dying from taxes, some reprieve to at least keep them in their house, whether it's sort of waiving taxes and taking a lien or whatever it is, right? Some process to keep elderly people in their homes in their final years. But I think one big limitation that I think we need to wrestle with, and we just need to tackle, I don't know why we haven't, is the HIDE Act, right? You talk to developers on 8th Street, and some buildings just don't pencil out, right? They can't get enough units in to make it work, and that's driving capital away and driving investment away. So I think You know, there's one person on stage has been around, 20 years. It's a hard issue to tackle, but I think it needs to be taken head on. It is limiting investment, it's limiting developers from pursuing some projects.
Well, the next question is related, and you'll start, Mr. Murphy. What role should council play in addressing, how should city balance historic preservation, which is a big concern here in Ward 6, with the need for additional housing? Where in Ward 6 would you pursue additional density?
My neighbors are going to kill me. But I mean, Charles has done some good work loosening up alley dwellings. I think it has been good. We haven't seen the fruits of it yet, but right across the street from me, between D&E and 4th and 5th, 3rd and 4th. Top of Union Station will be great. I think down along H Street, there is again some high capacity that we can tap into. I mean, density is our biggest strength. The Hyde Act is curtailing it. And I think that the hardest part of this job is telling your friends that you're not going to get everything you want. Pushing back on people who you're going to get 80% of what you want. You're not going to get 100% of what you want. So I think there's some people that sort of need to take the epicac, and we need to create density, and we need to sort of push back.
80% seems good, Mr. Murphy.
Well, yeah. I mean, I would. Again, 100% of nothing is nothing.
Ms. Nodden, question.
I'm definitely, proponent of historic preservation. It is the charm, again, and the brand of our town here. Definitely ADU, just having that expanded, getting more people involved in that. Middle density, building around our metro centers, and also in some of our pop-up neighborhoods, like Noma, but there's not really space there. There's a 30 acres on, over at Buzzard Point. So, that's where we could realize some density there, where there's zero historic preservation issues. So it's really about using more of the landscape that we have here in Ward 6, not necessarily, because when you're talking about historic preservation, I'm pretty sure you're talking about Capitol Hill proper, the core of 6.
I think Michael mentioned alley dwellings. I think when we talk about in historic districts, there are still ways you can actually increase density. Alley dwellings is one of the ways you can do that. But when I think about where in Ward 6 we have the opportunity to increase density, obviously, as we talk about the different neighborhoods of Ward 6, I've worked hard to help make sure we can actually create new homes. I believe that you've got to increase supply of housing. If we just constrain housing as more and more people want to live here, then we make our affordability crisis even worse. So we have to be able to build 2 huge opportunities, Ward 6 and Ward 6 adjacent. One is Union Station. Being able to build the Air Rights Project over the tracks, we lose so much land by having tracks just exposed where we could deck over, and there is a significant plan to be able to help use that, grab that density. We can build thousands of new homes in that space. Doesn't displace anybody because the trains are still running underneath it, but we're able to make sure we can actually build more housing and then the jobs that come with it and the new businesses that will take there. That's a huge opportunity to grow. The other, just outside Ward 6, we have this thing called RFK Stadium. While the Commanders are certainly building a stadium for 2030, the opportunity there and what we will build is over 8,000 new homes. That's 15,000 new residents that can go there. That's the equivalent of a small town in America someplace, right? Part of what I'm trying to think is the question around where can you actually get more density or build more homes, the next question you got to ask is how do we create that as an opportunity for a lot of people? When that deal was going through, one of the things that I made sure I wrote into it that Ward 6 small businesses get the preference for the hiring so that our Ward 6 businesses benefit from something being built just a few blocks away. I'm also very focused on transit. So how do we make sure that we're not expecting everyone just to drive through it, but I was able to knock down the parking that was going to be built and increase the amount of public transit and metro that's going to go in that space. because that's going to be a way we make that not just work for the stadium, but work for the community that's going to come. Those are really exciting opportunities to add thousands and thousands of new residents, and to your point about growing more density.
Density, affordability. What role should DC Council play now in addressing the rising cost of living? And that, I mean, housing, utilities, everyday expenses. Ms. Nodden, this year's as well.
So we're talking about middle class, right? Because, when I'm knocking on doors all throughout Ward 6, it's what we call the missing middle. And affordability, it's between childcare, that electric bill, the water bill, the gas, inflation, you name it, and people that got doged, right? So they're lacking the incomes that they've been used to. When it comes to what can government do about it, on one end, when we had the spike and everybody was alarmed and really pissed off about it, the electric bill, right? How do we manage the transparency of something like that creates instability in your monthly budgeting? You go from a $300 bill to $900. That's, destabilizing for a household. To pay $2,500 in in childcare, and you're middle class and you just got doged, that is really destabilizing again, right? So, this is when government can leverage its ability to, partner with the private sector, philanthropic sector. I know when it came to childcare, there was a fund that was created that, the philanthropic community kind of got behind to help close the gap in paying childcare providers. So it's the kind of power that government can exercise to leverage greater opportunities, especially during these times of austerity.
All right, I'll focus on utilities. So that's everybody's burn, everybody's saddle now. I think we talk about utilities. It's there's plenty of bad guys. There is a demand issue, the data centers. There's a supply issue that environmental regulations and well-meaning groups have caused. So we're bumping up against that now. As far as what the council can do directly, we're paying an awful lot for our solar program. The SRECs that I bought, I've got a solar system that I bought on my roof, and I get an SREC check every quarter, and our rate, frankly, is about 10 times higher than the average. And I think that, again, the trade-off there was to try to get more adoption. We haven't seen more adoption. We're sort of in the 4 to 5% range. So every one of you is paying, some portion of your bill, and every other solar operator's bill or owner's bill. So I think that's something the council can do, is to knock that SREC credit back down to more of a market rate and try to get more adoption by lowering the cost. To PEPCO, another thing that the council's not helpless on is, the sort of full nuclear version would be go to the community power model and take the profit 8 to 13% out of PEPCO. Now that's a little thorny, and there's a whole legal wrangling, but there is an intermediate step of going to sort of a community co-op, where we take over the purchase. And because we have an incentive that PEPCO doesn't, right? PEPCO buys power at the market and then just spreads that cost. We are price sensitive. We can drive that cost down with multi-year contracts, or sort of finding a cheaper marginal rate that would knock a little bit off of everybody's bill.
Yeah, I think in this election season, more so than I think others, we've heard affordability talked about a lot more. And the question you really get to is, so what are you actually going to do about it, right? I'll give you 3 main areas that I think the council, to your question, can take very concrete steps. The first is helping working families keep more money in their pocket. We do that through the earned income tax credit. So I led the charge on this to help increase our earned income tax match, so that people are able to keep more. Working families, lower income and moderate income households can keep more of their hard-earned money in their family budget. That is a way that we make things more affordable, by taking the EITC and giving the money back to those working families. Second, the cost of childcare. I've got two kids, an 8th grader and a 4th grader. So I'm a couple years removed from early childhood, but let me tell you, when they were in childcare, it's like carrying an extra mortgage. It's incredibly expensive. The pay equity fund that was referenced earlier, I created that. I funded that. It is a huge way that we were able to help make sure that our early child care workers are earning a higher wage, which is really important. And it also means we have more and better access to quality child care, which is great for every other working family out there as well, because now they have greater confidence they can have child care. That's important. The third thing is how we go about lowering the cost of utilities. Let me tell you, if you lower SRECs, then you are going to be decreasing the ability to finance and get solar installed. The biggest barrier that I hear from people that want to go solar is that the interconnection charges for PEPCO are through the roof. We're helping one resident who PEPCO said they would charge them $195,000 to put solar on the roof. The solar array itself costs $20 to $30. That is nuts. I'm leading the charge to the council to help cut the red tape and lower the cost to make it easier to put solar on our homes and in our community, because when we generate our own electricity and power locally, we're less dependent on the grid and we make it much more affordable for everybody.
Nice. All right, we all know that RFK campus is not in Ward 6, but it sure is Ward 6 adjacent. Anyone who's ever been woken up at night by a boom, boom, boom. I'm sure that's all of us here. What is it that you most want to fight against for RFK campus, given that the stadium is already a go? What is the thing you most want to see? We've talked enough about affordable housing, I think, that we can all agree we want to see that. Let's talk about something else. And adjacent, would you ever support a casino? That would require a change in law, but would you support it? This question starts with you, council member.
No to a casino right away. I don't want a casino there, period. In terms of, thanks. Number one biggest thing we've got to, that I'm concerned about that we have to fight against is traffic. That is why I prioritized when we negotiated this deal to lower the amount of parking, to increase the amount of transit. Because if the expectation is for major events, everybody's just driving on through, let me tell you, we've seen that movie before. It doesn't end well. So we have to focus on getting people here by transit. As part of the deal I negotiated, more investment from the commanders, more investment from the city to help build our metro. So Stadium Armored Metro Station is going to be completely reimagined, rebuilt, and expanded, which is going to be significant. I would like to see a new station added at Oklahoma and Benning as well. And in particular, the ability to help connect people from Union Station down H and on down Benning, and then to points east through Ward 7 with more bus rapid transit. That's a way that we can actually invest in better transit in that space. And I think that's how we're going to get at fighting against the traffic. In terms of what was your other question, or what are we excited about? Or what more can we do besides affordable housing?
What don't you want to see?
Okay, you tell me I can't talk about affordable housing?
Okay.
All right. So besides affordable housing,
Easy.
I think part of it is the opportunity to use this as an opportunity to help support and grow our local businesses. So when you see big projects like this, often they go and they start going out and start pulling in big businesses from outside of town. What we did is we mandated there has to be a labor peace agreement to make sure that it's good quality union jobs. They're focused here. We also wrote in requirements they have to partner with Ward 6 CBEs so that Ward 6 local businesses have a preference in hiring, so that we make sure that the business that's just 4 blocks away has a better shot at landing the jobs, because that means they're employing locally, they're hiring locally, and those jobs are right here in our hometown, in our ward.
It's not.
Was the question about casinos? Yeah, I don't think anybody wants to a
Right.
casino.
It's it's 180 acres, right? So
Mhm.
what do you want to see? Something you want to see, not affordable housing, you're going to push for.
Yeah.
Some you definitely don't want to see, you're going to work against. Don't say affordable housing. Tell me
Yeah.
how you feel about a casino.
Yeah, I don't think that, there's any community benefit or positive impact to having a casino there. But we don't want to see, traffic congestion. We do want to see smart multimodal opportunities to transport people from the business corridors that end up hopefully, injecting, new business from people that are going to games or concerts. It's not even just games, it's concerts as well. So what could it look like to have shuttles from Eastern Market or even H Street, Union Station, as far out as a Penn Quarter, to navigate people through, opportunities to stop right here. I'm going to keep using Capitol Hill. I think a missed opportunity is, it's called Eastern Market Metro Park. I actually never knew there was a name to that. But we recently saw there was only $113,000 to sort of revitalize it. And I think there's got to be way more, infrastructure investment in something as iconic as Eastern Market. The readiness has to happen for attracting businesses, small businesses that want to be there, and to invest in the legacy businesses like Mr. Henry's, who want an opportunity to play a role in the economic community, and between the transportation being designed in a way that helps accent the business opportunity for our current corridors, including H Street as well. Wish the streetcar was still here so we could realize that opportunity as well.
Do you have anything you really don't want to see?
I don't want to see traffic congestion. Yeah, I don't want to see that.
Okay, good. Thank you, Mr. Murphy.
Okay, this is going to be well-trodden ground here. I definitely agree that not a casino guy. I think, we need creative ways to sort of get people offloading at Union Station, at Union Market, whether it's shuttles for Barracks Row, shuttles for H Street, shout out to the H Street bid that's forming, and to create, alternative ways for people to get on the red line so they can then get to the stadium quickly, and sort of, kind of reduce travel times there. We've got a great strip of restaurants up H that would lead you right to game time. Barracks Row the same. So I think that, we need to be creative in our transportation options there. On campus, I agree that, local businesses is what I frequent. Never been to the Cheesecake Factory. I'm happy to report. That's it without sort of repeating things ad nauseum.
Let's take you to the next question because it's related. How should the city balance pedestrian safety, bicycle infrastructure, parking, traffic flow, scooters in our neighborhoods?
To me?
Yeah.
First thing I would do, I think, is to, I walk up and down H Street all the time and nearly getting mowed down by Lime bikes. I think there is a way to technologically geofence those sidewalks to make it a little more bearable. So I would press on that. I bike commute from the Hill to Georgetown, my office in Georgetown, and for the most part, I'm on the mall or on the path by the Kennedy Center. I won't say it. It's generally safe. The first 6-8 blocks from my house, 3rd and E, are the most dangerous. I think we need real sort of traffic enforcement. I think, cameras serve a purpose, obviously, but, I think that, we need real live traffic enforcement back. I think that those are the, pedestrian safety is a real issue. Like, again, that you're 24% more likely to be hit, by school, right? Why is that? Figure it out.
It's none.
Well, every piece of multimodal transportation you mentioned sounds so exciting. But when you're listening to what families and individuals are saying, they just wish that somebody had conferred with them first. Just come listen to how that affects their lived experience and their quality of life to have maybe parking spaces taken or cutouts. And definitely, I'm hearing a lot about these limes going 25 miles an hour, something about scooters or bikes. And I think it's the bikes that are going way too fast. And a girl just told me at an MPD meeting, her brother got wiped out, because he was hit by somebody on a 25 mile an hour. I think that's right. So legislatively, I think we should, reduce the speed in which those not vehicles, but the is it a scooter or is that a lime? What? Yeah, the e-bike. bike. Yeah, that's a recent piece of feedback I'd gotten from somebody who was really, hurt by that. I don't know why it would go 25 miles an hour. But just thinking about the design, like the design for traffic calming. I spoke to other people about, why aren't speed bumps here or, stop signs there? We have kids going by. So I don't know that we are thinking deeply enough, listening to constituents about how it affects their daily life. And that's what I'm definitely committed to do.
I think they say in DC, all politics comes down to parking. And so it can feel like a third rail, but I think that when we talk about how we make sure we can move around our city safely, it's not just about what's the right policy. I will acknowledge it is deeply personal to me. I have lost people in my lives who were killed on a bike on DC, stopped at a red light. I have lost a friend of mine who was walking on a crosswalk with the walk signal, hit by a driver. When it's deeply personal, you care a lot about it and you work hard at it. And when we listen to everybody and seek the balance, you got to also recognize that we are all pedestrians at some point. You deserve to be able to walk down the block, whether you're coming down to Eastern Market, whether you're walking your kid to school, wherever you're going. And we prioritize the convenience of drivers coming from out of town to our neighborhood over our ability to get around. I don't care how you get around, whether it's walking, whether it's biking, whether it's scooters. I want you to get there safely from point A to point B. And a major part of that is certainly how do we design and balance the design to be able to get that right. But what the city has not done right is the enforcement. That's why I led the STEER Act to the council to be able to hold these dangerous drivers accountable. How many people have seen the Maryland driver that has $40,000, $50,000 worth of unpaid speeding tickets? Everybody's head's nodding about this. You know what I'm talking about. And we haven't had an ability to help hold them accountable, and I was sick and tired of it. So I passed the STEER Act, and so now our Attorney General can go after them in court. It is changing the assumptions and expectations that folks have. Most people, when you get one ticket, you change your behavior. What we've got to go after are the people that do it over and over and over again that make us less safe. And that's part and has to be part of the conversation is holding dangerous drivers accountable because they make you, they make me, they make all of us less safe on the streets in Ward 6 and across DC.
Everything we want costs money, and DC doesn't have any. People are losing jobs, right? Businesses are feeling the stress. Federal dollars aren't flowing to DC in the ways that DC gets to direct. They're causing funds to flow. That's nice, but not as direct as we would like it. With this ongoing budget pressure, what's one program in the budget that you would protect and one where you would cut? Now, I've lost track of where I was.
I'll go first. I'm happy to.
Go first.
Okay. If I've got to pick one, it's one of the fights we're in right now is around childcare. Our pay equity fund is dollar for dollar one of our best investments in our city. It does two things simultaneously. It helps our childcare workers, which are predominantly Black and brown women in our city, increase wages. So we're able to help make sure that people are bringing home a bigger paycheck and respecting and honoring the hard work that they do. And at the same time, that pay equity fund helps ensure we have greater numbers of quality childcare seats. That is deeply important for every working family in our city. Again, anybody out here who's ever had a kid in childcare already knows what I'm talking about. It's hard to find. It's overly expensive. So that would be one that I would absolutely prioritize that has to get done. Second, in terms of what would I say cut, I would like to cut the CFO's office. Don't know if you heard about this, but basically our chief financial officer is paying, you are paying $26 million a year for a lease that they're not using. We have found that they are not coming to the office. It is an empty office with a lease of $26 million. I would take that $26 million, put it right back into investing in things that matter a heck of a lot more to your life.
So you literally mean his physical office space.
Physical office, not eliminate the chief financial officer. Their office space. They're not using it, but we're stuck with the bill.
Excellent.
The question is, what would I keep and cut?
What would you protect and what would you cut?
I would protect the DHCD's Housing Production Trust Fund. It's a fund that has produced approximately about $1 billion worth of affordable housing units throughout the city. But to add the preservation of affordable housing, I think it has been a pretty powerful tool in our toolkit for developing affordability. And what would I cut? Well, I don't know that I would cut it, but if we're not filling the MPD seats, but we have the $657 million, it's being able to reallocate that type of funding to social services.
You mean the budget for MPD, you would reallocate part of it?
Yeah, if we're not using it, there's oftentimes even with federal, line items, in our $21.2 billion budget, we have, federal money that ends up going back. So it's really just reallocating where, if it's not being used, use or lose federal funds.
Be a bit of pressure on overtime, though, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Murphy, go ahead, please.
I agree with the Pay Equity Fund. I think that is an invaluable program, has definitely served its purpose, and I think it's something we need to use to create a pipeline for training teachers, frankly, to find homegrown teachers into DCPS. As far as what to cut, I think our DCPS administrative function is just way over the top and way bloated, I think. I assume they go to the office. I don't know if they do or not, but and we're paying like 2x the administrative costs. So I think there are savings there to be found.
Short, sweet. Two more questions, friends, before we get to our conclusion. For those of you who are looking at your watches, yes, I see you. Mr. Murphy, I believe you're going to start this one. Am I right?
If you say so.
We're trusting you.
Yeah, well, there you go. Trust the press, friends. Ward 6 does not have a senior wellness center. How will you assist our seniors? Go ahead. Correct. What? Oh, right. Sorry. Ward 6 wanted a senior wellness center on top of Rumsey Pool. They're not going to get it. How are you going to help our neighborhood seniors aging in place and in their neighborhood activities?
So I think I've seen recently where DC is becoming a retirement haven. So I think senior programming. I don't know about the current senior wellness center now, but I wear go to Tony Cliffs and play mahjong for sure. I think there's a pretty robust community, and I think that there's something to tap into. I don't have a specific program at my fingertips now.
Okay, go for it, Alan.
Okay. Yes, we do have a Ward 6 Senior Center. It's the Hayes School in Northeast. And yes, at Rumsey, the second floor is going to have senior services that are there, and it's a partnership with DPR. Rumsey is actually a good example to make this. I am frustrated by the lack of creativity from our agencies to think about how we deliver senior services. This idea that we just need like one single bricks and mortar space per ward, and that's all we're going to do, is the lowest common denominator. That does not cut it, and it doesn't, I think, give what a lot of our seniors that I talk to what they're really looking for. We need to be thinking much more boldly about what this looks like. When I think about our Southwest Branch Library, I talk to Southwest seniors who are saying, how do I connect to the Hayes School? Like, it's up in Northeast, and I live in Southwest. How do I connect to that? And we don't have great connections to it. I want our Office on Aging, TACL, to focus on partnering with the Southwest Library to create dedicated space and services in our library. Why is every library not being viewed as having dedicated senior services? We used to look at our rec centers and actually have dedicated senior services in our rec centers. Why are we not looking at every single rec center to think about how do we make sure we have dedicated programming to help make sure? That's part of what we're doing at Rumsey now, because we need to have more dedicated services and spaces. And so I think this idea that the city embarked on long ago of just these one singular spaces for a ward is just the wrong way to go, because it requires every single person to come to that one physical location. I go up to the Hayes School and have lunch all the time with seniors there, play bingo. It's great. but it's not adequate from a space perspective. It's too small, it's oversubscribed, and it needs to have more, but the ward needs to be able to have more spaces. And part of what I push for is to have the city think much more creatively, and we're going to deliver that at Rumsey, but we need to be doing more of that in all of our public spaces.
Ms. Nodden, aging in place and neighborhood activities wellness center.
Yeah, so I frequent the senior housing, it's a center, but it's really their housing at Capitol Hill Towers. We have about 6 senior housing residencies in Ward 6, and what they've asked for is, being able to have activities within their building. They do go to the one at 5th and K for bingo and movie night and popcorn and the like, and we do only have one, so I'm glad there's another one coming at Rumsey. But most of the residents that I'm speaking to, they want to stay in the place that they are in and have activities and even food. Just having access to healthy foods, all of that sort of built in to sort of the concept of like having community and activities within the space that they live in.
So guys, this is my penultimate question before I ask you to conclude. I'm like, what question will I ask that's contentious? You'll never know what the other one was. You get to start, Ms. Nodden, and I'm going to go for the heart. What is one thing the two candidates on either side of you fundamentally misunderstand about Ward 6? She laughs.
Michael's a nice guy. They're actually both nice guys. It's just that both of them, I think, miss the perimeter of Ward 6, like that there's 10 distinct neighborhoods. And, that connection to community, again, when I'm out in all of those neighborhoods and they haven't met the council member, they don't know. And whether they're a 2-year resident or they've been there 20 years, sort of the disconnect between, public leadership and civil servants and what they need. And so not having a conduit of communication about, how they want to see their lives designed, what their needs are, what infrastructure concepts they have to contribute. So, it's really just connection to community. I think that's, what I wish more for from, our incumbent. Again, Michael's a nice guy, but, I just feel like he's kind of just got here. But, yeah.
I deliberately
said you went for the heart. Okay.
I did go for the heart. Mr. Murphy, we're going to leave our incumbent to the end. Go ahead.
Just got here. I had a whole lot more hair when I got here in 93. So, again, I think that I got in this race because of the crime stats issue, sort of accidentally. So I think that you get so close to something that you kind of lose sight of it. That's sort of a soft knock, I guess. Gloria, again, when I announced, I was at her doorstep and the first to sign her petitions. I can't say any sort of specific shortcomings or
So are you saying you want her #1 voters to rank you #2 on the ballot?
I would.
Somebody's got to make news. You guys are so nice.
I would welcome that.
Okay, council member.
I think listening to my two colleagues up on the stage tonight, I think that you hear people in good faith caring about their community, caring about the future of their community, the neighbors that they've talked to, and what they want to see out of their ward and what they want to see out of their city. I think you also don't hear tons of contrast, actually. We have certainly different issues that we may prioritize, but I don't hear you saying huge amounts of contrast, right? I'm not going to take your bait on this. I think that I believe that public service is a privilege. Being able to put your hand up and the bravery it takes to put your name on a ballot, the courage it takes to run a campaign, to go knock on doors, care about your community, that you put yourself out there like that, I think deserves respect. And I'm not going to knock the two folks sitting on the stage. We may have different approaches we might take to solve the same problem, but I'm not going to take that bait because I think that you've got some really good people who care about the community. They've lived here for a long time, and I think that just deserves a bit more respect than that.
You guys, if I were Sam Ford up here, I'd be like, chicken. But I haven't been in news for 50 years, so I would never say that. And now we've come to our concluding comments. Everybody gets 1 minute to conclude. We will work our way from that side of the room back to our incumbent. I think that's only fair. It is.
Well, thank you for participating. Thanks to the Hill Center for hosting this. My wife actually sits on the board that books the Root series on Sundays, so go to those. She's not here tonight, unfortunately. She's down at her job. Yeah, this has been a real privilege to participate in this process. I do have one ask that anybody you see with the clipboard, please sign their petition. Very humbling process, a very interesting, intimate process. I recommend everybody doing it and not doing it. But it's been an incredible learning experience, and I've made a lot of friends, learned a lot along the way. Thank you for allowing me to participate.
I will ditto that. I mean, what an honor to be part of this democratic process of, signing up, finding the courage to be in service to your community. We just really need to do things differently. If, we are kind of chugging along, but we still have, crime in our communities and people feel unheard and these issues are not addressed, from very simple things like, hey, I just need to have my snow shoveled, to very complex issues like crime, affordability, and government accountability. It just is time for change. I don't necessarily believe in complacency and lifelong career service as a politician. We need fresh ideas. We need people who have past performance of getting things done, and me working across systems in banking, finance, and government, and the arts. I know that I'll bring a creative, fresh approach that will have you rank me first. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for hosting us tonight, and thanks everybody for coming out. I mentioned earlier, public service is a privilege. And I remember the very first time I ran for office, I talked about asking for your vote is asking for your trust. It is yours to give. And so I am grateful for the fact that you have elected me, and I have won every precinct in Ward 6 to make sure that I'm representing the totality in all of Ward 6. What that's allowed me to do is deliver not just for Ward 6, but for our city. As a senior member of the council now, with a little more gray hair than when I started, it also means that I am able to help deliver on big, bold ideas to help move our city forward. But I and my team are just as focused on the crack in the sidewalk or every neighborhood block thing that has to get done. And so the commitment you have from me is to continue to serve you with integrity, to continue to serve you with vision, and lead boldly for our ward and for our city. So I'm asking for your vote. I'm asking for you to rank me number 1 on your ballot. Ballots will be arriving in the mailbox this week, so you can go ahead and get it done. But if you like to procrastinate, you can wait till June 16th. But I hope to have your vote and support. So thank you all very much.
And thank you all for being here. Thank you for all being part of the democratic process and showing up in person. This is streaming and will be on YouTube. Thank you to the Hill Center, to Frank and his chairs, to our delightful sound person. And please do pick up your Hill rag, where all of this can be found in print. Keep me employed. Thank you all.
Thank you.